Hello, welcome to a video about MaterialFX, which is a library for JavaFX that we can use for creating this cool Google Material design look instead of the boring default look of JavaFX. So it kind of moderns up everything. What it looks like, it looks something like this. This is an example from MaterialFX webpage, an example of buttons. They have this demo application. I'm going to show what we can use that for in a minute. But basically we can have all kinds of cool buttons, like we can have flat buttons, raised buttons, outline buttons, and all of this stuff that looks just a lot better than like our usual GUI. So it also gives our application sort of a more like app-like feel and modern feel than these this kind of old school one. First, I'm going to show like the MaterialFX web page. Later, I'm going to show how I'm going to use it in IntelliJ. So first off, this web page here is, I'm not that fond of the way that they set it up. I think it's hard to find what you really need here. But basically what you need to do first is you need to put it into your build. So first off, you need to go here, depending on which kind of build system you use. I just used the default one with IntelliJ, but I'm going to use Maven for repository. So that's why I'm clicking Maven here. And I can see here it says dependency, and then there's this group ID that I'm copying for later, and then it's called MaterialFX, and then this is the newest version. We'll just use the newest one. So I also installed Scenebuilder already, so I have that running here. I installed IntelliJ and everything, but in this video I'm going to show how to set up the IntelliJ project as well. You can just skip that part if you already know how to do that. So just how to create a JavaFX project as well. So before I do that, in here what you will see is that there are two important places you want to go. One of them is this Wiki page that they have. If we go to that page here, we can see in here there's like a documentation of everything. For example, the one I showed before with the buttons, we can see in here, play a small video where they click around and you can see how the ripple effects work on the buttons so that you can see you press them. You can see some very basic information in here, like you can see the style class, which I'm going to use later, and you can see which files they reside in, the CSS file and everything. And you can see something here called stylable properties. So for example, here you can see it says flat buttons. They look like that, and these are, sorry, here these are raised buttons. There's kind of a shadow behind them. So this is the one called button type. So button type is like a stylable property that we can set directly in our fxml file by simply writing button type equals flat or button type equals raised. So we can see here it's either flat or raised. These are the two that we can select. There's also something called depth level, how intense the drop shadow effect is. This is also something we can do directly in our fxml file. So it's not a CSS property that we're setting here. It's actually properties that we can set directly. That also means we can do that from the code directly, which is pretty cool. If we want to do some of that from the CSS, we can also see the CSS properties here. So we can do like style mfx button type equals or sorry colon flat to set it to flat button type. So that's that's kind of the Wikipedia thing. And of course we can go for all the other cool things as well. They have this like combo boxes we can look into. They have check boxes where we can have also this very nice slider thing that we know from also especially coming from Apple, that we have these cool little switches instead, that we can, instead of just checking it, we can actually, and we have tri-state values here, and these are only on-off values, setting different colors for them, stuff like that. My only problem in here is that sometimes it can be hard to know how to do these things, because for example in here we can see all kinds of things like checkbox, toggle button, radio button, and all of this stuff, but it's not really clear, other than it's called MFX checkbox, that this is what we need to use. So it's not that clear in here, other than if we want to use it, we say MFX checkbox, and how are we going to style it, like this or like this? So I think for that, the easiest way to figure that out is simply to go directly into the GitHub repository and then go into the demo. I already did that here for buttons, for example. So if we go into the demo and then we look under, right now under the CSS part, we can see for the one where it's creating the buttons, we can actually see in here, this is actually how the button is made to outline. So for example, if we go here, sorry, we can see here it says outlined buttons, but I can't say button type outlined or something like that. So it's actually something they made here in CSS. So we can see they use the background color, border radius, they override those, and that actually gives us these nice outlined buttons. So I think you really have to go in here to make sure that you do it so that it looks like that, if you want it to look exactly like they do here. Yeah. So you can, one of them is going into the CSS part, the other one is going into the fxml file under buttons, and then we can see that the one outlined, it says outline buttons here. So if I find that text here somewhere, it says here outline buttons, I know that this is kind of the label where the buttons are set. It says MFX button here, some minimum height and width. This is from the basic JavaFX stuff. And then it says style class here, outline button. So we can see here it calls style class. That means that it uses the CSS code that I showed before for setting the outline. So it's not like it's something that that is built into the properties directly. It's something that you have to override yourself. If you look at the other one here, those buttons are pretty much the same. You can see this button and this button looks very similar. It looks a bit different maybe. There are some outline or something. It's hard for me to see actually. Sorry. Maybe because the animation file is a bit yeah, bad quality. But anyway, you can see that the difference is that this one is raised and the other one is not. So, and this part with the grid pane is just for setting them in the correct placement in the grid pane. It has nothing to do with the button itself. It has to do with the grid pane that is surrounding it. Yeah, so the text is button, nice. Yeah, so let's try to put all of this stuff into IntelliJ. So let's jump into IntelliJ. I already did something in here, but I want to remove that. So the first thing that I'm going to do is just create a brand new project in here. And I'm not going to use this JavaFX project. I think it always ends up giving me problems and everything, and I don't want to introduce Maven right now, so I'll just go use the default IntelliJ build system instead and show how to do it with that. You are welcome. If you want to use Maven for real, you can do that, or Gradle. But for this, I'm just going to show how to do it in the basic IntelliJ. I'm using the Liberica, Belsoft Liberica JDK, because it has JavaFX built in, which just makes everything so much easier. And you can easily just click download from within IntelliJ and download that if you need that. I'm using the newest version. If there's a newer one than this one, just use the newest one. Of course, it might break in the future, but yeah, then go back and try the older one. But I think normally it should just work with the newest version. So let's go. So let's call this one MaterialFX for YouTube. And I'll just set add sample code. It just creates a main method. Open that up in the same window. So yeah, so now I have this one. There's not much JavaFX in here. So the first thing, I'm going to convert this into a JavaFX application by writing extends application, and it says JavaFX application. This only works if you put in use Belsoft JDK or something like that that has it built in, or you already imported JavaFX. Otherwise, it's not part of the standard JDK and you won't see it. So if we use application, we also need to implement the start method. So I just click implement and OK, and I'll get the start method like that. The next thing I want to do is I want to change this main method so it just doesn't just print something. And then we should call the launch method with the arguments, which will send whatever command line arguments that are sent to the application to the JavaFX application launcher, which will build everything behind the scenes, set everything up, and then call this start method here. Okay. So in this start method here, what we want to do is we want to first do the fxml loader. And if you already know this, just skip it. fxml loader. And in here, I usually use the get class method for getting the current class. You can also write the name of the class, but then you can't change the name of the class without changing here as well. So I like to use the get class, get resource, and then we need to say whatever resource we are going to load. And I'll just call it the resource app.fxml. So that should set up the loader with the correct resource. And sorry. Then I can do loader.load. This will actually load the first pane or whatever is my root thing in here. So I say parent root equals, and I need to import parent, and then I'm going to say scene, and I'll create a new scene on that, and I'm going to set the root element, which will then inject the root into the scene, and then I need to I get the primary stage from up here, which I'm going to set the scene. Set scene, if I can spell it, and then I set the scene here. So now I added the scene to the stage, so I'm ready to show it. Show. I can also, if I want to, maybe set a name for the stage, or really it's just a window. I don't know why they call it stage, but we'll call it, give it some kind of title like cool design or something like that. So now that we have that in place, we should be able to run this file. So I'll just click here, because if I do that, it will create like this run configuration for me, and I can reuse that later to run the application from anywhere, not just this file. Oh, I have a problem. So let's see, I probably forgot something here. in line 15. Oh yeah, I forgot to create the fxml file. That might have been a good idea to do that. Okay. So of course it can load any file that I didn't create yet. If you imported JavaFX correctly, you should also be able to right click here and say new and then choose fxml file. So app, I'm going to call that. And the fxml file will then look for a controller, which I haven't created. So really the one called app here, I'll just say create class app. So that is really the controller. We could also maybe app controller would be a better name. So yeah, of course I need to change it in here as well. Like that. So now I have a fxml file. I have my app controller here. I don't know why it's so. Yeah, rename file, sorry. I need to have the same file name as the class. So now we are ready. We have a JavaFX application should be able to run. The default fxml has an anchor pane, so it should actually show something now. Yeah, it says cool design, but there's nothing cool about it yet. So the next thing, let's try to load this one up in Scenebuilder. So I'm just going to close the Scenebuilder I have open already, and then open this one up in Scenebuilder just by right-clicking, open in Scenebuilder. If you haven't got Scenebuilder, you can download it, and then it will ask for the location. So now Scenebuilder opened up. So let's try to look for something. So we saw in here that we needed something. Let's go find here. It says, for example, for the checkbox, there's a MFX checkbox that we can use. So maybe just go for a button because it's more simple. So there should be something called MFX buttons or something inside our Scenebuilder, but there isn't. If I go for MFX, there's nothing in here. And that's because Scenebuilder needs to load the MFX library as well, the MaterialFX library. The way you do that in Scenebuilder is very counterintuitive to me. I don't know why you can't really, like, you would think you should include or import, but it's not really here. For some reason you have this very tiny cogwheel up here that you have to press, and then you have to use this jar fxml manager. Yeah, I think it's weird that it's here, but it should definitely, it could be here, but then definitely also in the top menu. But that's, yeah, another story. So in here I can see all the libraries I installed, which is nothing. So what I'm going to do is search repositories, and fortunately it can search the Maven repositories real easily. So if we go in here, we should just remember what was the name of the MaterialFX repository. If I scroll down on the main page, I could see the group ID here. So if I go back here and paste that here, and then it was MaterialFX, and then I click search, then I get one result, and I just click add jar, and it will take the newest one and then simply try to import that. And I can see here now I have all of the MFX button, for example, which was the one that I was aiming for in here, the one for creating the buttons. MFX button, it's called. So now I have everything. And I can choose, I don't need to have everything in here, but I think it's nice, so I'll just import everything. You can uncheck some if you want. So now everything is imported, and we saw it updated over here. So if I type now, I type MFX. So if I take the button, for example, I get a nice button like this. It takes a while on this computer, it's a bit slow. But now I have a button here. If I do the normal button, we can clearly see the difference here, right? And if I go preview, show preview in window, we can see If I click this one, or if I click this one, there's this nice ripple effect from where I clicked it. Another thing that I talked about before going into IntelliJ was the ability to have it flat, or what did they call it? Let's go in here, flat or raised, right? So we can see down here that there are two stylable properties. So that means we can actually select those directly from JavaFX. We don't need to use CSS for that. So button type, we can set that. So let's see if we can do that in Scenebuilder. So for this button here, I should have a property in here. I have a lot of ripple animation stuff, ripple color I can set. So that's pretty cool. So the first one is actually button type. So I can change that into raised. And now it looks raised. And I can also go in here and set all the ripple color background, which it gets from the ripple and the depth level. All of the cool stuff that we could see here, Scenebuilder can actually just look that up for us, so it's very easy to use. So that's pretty cool. So now that we have a button like this is actually how we use it. So anytime we want to use something from that, we just go MFX, and we can go for checkbox as well. And for the checkbox, we can look at the custom part. This is yeah, content disposition. If we set the text for select, something like that, you can see now it says select over here, and for the select we can choose content disposition if we want to put it on bottom, top, center, all of this stuff. Not so important. The gap between it and stuff like that. But I think that what they're missing in the web page, which I think is a bit annoying, is that, for example, if I go for checkboxes, I can see that they have all of this cool stuff in here, but what about the toggle button? What if I want a toggle button? So what we can do is we can go into the main page and we can go into the demo application. So let me open that in a new window. So in the demo application, if we go under source and main and resources, not the Java one, but the resource one, then we can see our FXML and CSS. If I go to FXML and then the check radio toggles, then we can go see how are they actually created in here. And if we go, this one is checkboxes. This isn't what I wanted. So let's go further down. This one is radio. So it says custom radio, custom text stuff here. It says custom radio. What was the last one? Switch. Was that the one? Let's look at it. That was the buttons. Toggle buttons it's called. Let's see if we can find that. Yeah. So these are the toggle buttons. So they kind of have something here, an ID called custom toggle button. So we need to figure out how that's set up. So there's nothing here other than the content disposition and stuff. There's nothing here setting it like that. So we need to look for that ID in the CSS file. So I'll go back here one more and go into CSS and then go into check radio toggles. And then I need to find the one called, here it says radios toggle buttons. So here it says MFX toggle button, MFX toggle button, custom toggle button. So this is kind of the code that you need to copy into your program if you want to do something similar to that. So let's copy that part and then go back. I'll save this one, close it, and go into Scenebuilder. I can see it's in here now. Just need to import these. Okay, I haven't imported the I didn't even do that yet. Okay, so I also of course need to import the MaterialFX library into IntelliJ. So what I do, I go under File and then the project structure. And on the project structure, I go into Libraries and I click the plus logo. And then I check the one called From Maven. And then I need to have the path that I used before for the Maven. So it was something io dot, let's go back here. Find it. Palex dev. Can't remember, something like that. And then MaterialFX. Press the search button. Maybe I misspelled it or something. MaterialFX, the newest version, like that. I'll click download to this library here. I like to have it locally like that. And transitive dependencies is important because it is actually dependent on another library as well that you'll see in a second. It asked me if I should add it to the module. I have to do that in order for it to work, so I'll say OK. And then you can see it uses something called virtualized effects, which is something that it needs as well. It's another library from the same author. So it's nice that it can do that. We don't need to download that afterwards. Now I click OK and I should be able to find all my imports and everything here now. So we can see button type is set to raised here. The checkbox is not set to anything yet. Okay, so let's just create a CSS file. So I'll just say source new. Is there style sheet? And I'll just call it app CSS. And I'll that I forgot. I'll just find the code back here. Here it was, toggle buttons. Put that in here. So I'll go back and then I need, this was the CSS part that I needed. Let's see if there's anything in general. Maybe we'll need some of the imports. We'll check that later. But I'll go back to the fxml then, radio toggles, and we'll just see what we need. Oh, okay. So we'll go back to the fxml file, and instead of the checkbox, we change into the toggle button and import that. So we don't really need the CSS part that much for this one because it already has like MFX toggle button. I just didn't see that actually. So, but in sometimes we do need the, if we want the custom toggle button stuff, there is something here. It changes the font smoothing type and it also changes the font family. And I don't have any of those fonts, so it's not really going to use it. It will run anyway, I think, but just won't show up. So I could actually just say MFX toggle button. But sometimes, as with the buttons and the other things they do, they use custom CSS to make it look like that, and where there's no like ability to just choose the right one here. So the toggle button was built in, which is pretty nice. And the color comes from the custom CSS that we did in here. So you can see, no, it doesn't really, because it just says custom toggle button and I didn't set it to custom toggle button. So that's just the default then. So that's pretty cool. So this way you can go and find everything. You don't need to go back and forth. I think it's a shame that they didn't do some more work on documenting it in a way that it's easier just to copy paste it when you need to use it. But then again, maybe people that work with this a lot, they can remember everything and they don't need that. But yeah, but this is the way that I do it if I want to kind of copy. And I think it's really cool that they show it by creating the demo so that we can just see what things look like. And if I want to do, for example, date picker, I can click this one and I can see what it looks like. Even see an animation on how it works. It would be cool though if there was like example code here at the bottom for every one of them, so it would be very easy to set it up both in directly if you want to create it directly from code, but also if you want to create it from Scenebuilder, so that there was a bit more information on that part. But other than that, it's yeah, it's a really cool library. It works really well. So in that regard, there's no problems. Just find the documentation a tiny bit confusing, that you have to find bits and pieces all over the place. Okay, so that's it for this video. This is how you can install and use MaterialFX in IntelliJ and use it with the default IntelliJ build. And if you want to go more into this, I recommend going into the web page and going in here and trying to look into some of the cool stuff that you can find in here, or simply just skipping that, going directly into Scenebuilder for your fxml file, and then just trying and dragging and dropping all kinds of stuff into the scene just to see what it looks like and how it behaves, and try some stuff out. Because you can just type the MFX up here after you've imported it once, and then you can find all of these things in here. MFX spinner, stepper, toggle button. Yeah, so there's lots of cool stuff to check out. So that's it for the video. Thank you for watching.